Because we do not have Cucumber and Ruby by default on the systems we're using, we're going to try to emulate the acceptance testing features that Cucumber has by using one of the substitute languages. I've chosen Python because many students have a background with this. So here I'm going to show installing Python and the substitute for Cucumber, which is a package called Fresher. And I'm going to do all this with Cygwin. So here goes. What I would normally do is just take a browser, go to python.org, or I could just try searching download Python. And I could be more specific, but you can see I've got a bunch of them here. I might select 2.7.8 or whatever. I'm going to skip that just in the interest of time because I've already downloaded a Python 2.7 here. And double click on this and go ahead and run that. I'll just take all of the defaults, and it's going to end up putting everything in a system folder called Python 2.7. You can see C:python 2.7. And I'll assume that that's where it's been installed later when I launch Cygwin. And this actually does take a while. And so as this is going on, I'm going to jump ahead to the next step because it's not all that different. Oops, wait, and authorize this. Okay, and I'll call up a browser. And I'm going to go to the course website with the page on Cucumber. And part of that page has how to install under Cygwin, and it involves 3 different Python packages. There's one called setuptools, and another one called nose, and then a third one called Fresher. So that was setuptools. I can go ahead on this screen, grab nose, and I'm getting the tar.gz files in each case. And then something called Fresher, tar.gz. And as those are downloading, you can see that the Python installer is just about finished. I'll press finish, and it should be done with its business more or less. Back to the browser, and here I am showing all the downloads. I find it convenient to drag the downloads to the desktop. I may have something left over from previously, but that's okay. Setuptools, nose, and Fresher. So that should be it. That's all I need to manually get from what I've got. You can see now on the desktop there are 3 tar.gz files. Windows doesn't know how to do anything with those, but that's okay because I'm going to be launching Cygwin. Here I am in a Cygwin terminal. You can see there's my home directory inside of Cygwin, and you may remember from previous examples where I installed Ant and Maven that I set up a file called source.me. And I'm going to edit source.me just using Notepad and add some things onto the end of the path. And what I'm going to have the path end on are 2 new things, and here I've got them in blue. It's okay if you can't read them because they're on the website. But I've inserted something to search for the Python command and for any Python scripts. So there are actually 2 things that I put onto the path. And I always end it with an extra colon and a period so that if I have any commands in the local directory, it'll find those too. So that was the Notepad, and since I've already done that, we don't have to do that here. But what I do want to do is say source.me.sh. And now the path will have all of that extra stuff. And you can see there's the Python 2.7 scripts here on the end of what I printed. Very well, now we should have Python. Unfortunately, I've found that under Cygwin, the Python command in an interactive sense doesn't work, although it works fine under Windows. So what I'm going to do is try to move all of these tar.gz files from the Windows desktop here locally, just for ease of use. And I can do them all pretty simply. I can move because my name has a space, I had to put in a backslash to escape that. And I'll just take all of the tar.gz files and move them here. Whoops, I guess the star doesn't work in there, so maybe I'll have to do this one at a time. So that was desktop. Oh, I see, I forgot desktop. Star.gz. Here. Alright, so it did work. And you can see the desktop, they all three disappeared. And if I do an ls, there are the files here. And I'm going to extract them now, one at a time, to say tar.xf and the name of the file. In case you're wondering how I type this so fast, I'm not really doing that. I use the tab key and it fills it in. The tab key is a fairly wonderful thing working with commands. It often just guesses exactly what you need just by typing the first few characters. So now if I list, I should have some extra directories, and I do in fact have extra directories. And you can see there's Fresher and Setup Tools, and what I want to do first is go into Setup Tools. And the command to install Setup Tools, and it's one of the first things which ever has to be done on a new Python install, is install setup tools. It is python setup.py install, and this will install to the root drive of where Python is, which is the C drive inside of the Python 2.7 folder. And this takes a little while. It's doing a lot of busy work here of compiling everything, but that was it. I now have setup tools done. And let me get out of Setup Tools and see what's next. And the next thing would be nose. And the command here is the same, setup.py install. What you'll notice here, if you're looking, doing this on your own, is it's actually going to download some extra packages that it needs from the internet. Some, it seems to have some temporary failures, but it seems to do an adequate job. Okay, so that was installing nose. And the remaining part is this package called Fresher, which is really the overall thing we want. But it turns out we need nose and the nose tests command to run Fresher. So here I am in Fresher, and again, Python setup.py install. And it's done. So I now have everything installed, and as a check on this, I'm going to go up again to the home directory here and just go inside of nose, the code here. And inside of nose there are lots of examples, and you can see there's actually a directory called examples. I'll go into there, although I don't need to, but here are different examples, not very many. Doesn't look too interesting. Maybe I won't do that. But I'm going to try the nose tests command. And nose tests is a command which runs the unit testing facility within Python to just run lots of predetermined tests. And the nose test command, you can see that things slowed down and is typing a bunch of periods as it runs through hundreds of tests. If you can't find the nose test command, that means you didn't do the path setup correctly. So nose tests, which was installed when I did the setup.py install for nose, put a new command, nose tests, inside of the scripts folder inside of Python 2.7. And I had set up the path to look inside of the scripts. Well, it's still running, and you can see I've got E's and S's and different codes. We could read about those, but I just wanted to make the point that the nose tests command is doing something. And when it finishes here in about a minute, we're going to see as a summary report on how many tests passed and how many failed. It ran 377 tests in a little under a minute, and it failed in some cases. But we don't really care about that. Let me go back up to the home directory and get inside of Fresher. Fresher is the most interesting case for us, and I'm going to go inside of examples. And there are several examples. One is befriending. And that represents something like friending on Facebook or something like that. And I'm going to say nose tests. And if I just say nose tests, it won't find anything to test. And it says it ran 0 tests. That wasn't very good. But if I say nose tests with Fresher, oh, excuse me, it's nose tests with Fresher, it will now be aware that it's using Fresher, and it actually did run 1 test, which passed. We'll have to look later. I'll do this in class. I'll have more documentation on exactly how the tests are constructed and what it's actually doing in the background. But that was a little example of running Fresher, our substitute for Cucumber, inside of the Cygwin environment.